being moderate severity alligator cracking, and looking in the inside wheel path right here is an example of what I was speaking of. Although we also have quite a bit of what could be termed as longitudinal cracking, particularly here at the beginning of the test section. As you see over here in the outside wheel path, we typically have just a single crack working its way down throughout most of the length of the test section. Just as we had the problem in Gulf Shores yesterday, it's very difficult to characterize these. It's kind of tough to decide what kind of a name to assign to the types of cracking we see. We have cracking throughout the length of the test section, though. I think it's the worst condition that I noted in terms of distress was up here around stations 2 to 4 within the test section. We got into a lower severity level in here, but as you see right up where I'm coming to, which is around station 1+40, we get into a bit more alligator cracking, especially in the outside wheel path, and I'll momentarily stop and show you an example of what I'm talking about. Yield some perspective on this. This is a very common type of crack we see in here, although it's probably of a lesser severity than we often see on up ahead especially. You can see the cracks are held tightly together and there isn't any spalling associated with them, whereas on downstream we do see quite a bit of that, and the majority of that which we are noting here is being categorized as moderate level. In this area it is not. However, on down from us in the subsequent stations, that is our most typical type of distress. Again, it's difficult to say or to distinguish between what is block cracking, what is alligator cracking, and also where do the transverse cracks come in here. As a general rule, if I'm calling anything block cracking, I'm not counting anything as a transverse crack in that area. That is part of the block as I'm defining it. If all we have is longitudinal cracking or some alligator cracking, then if we have a transverse crack which crosses outside the range of that in either wheel path, then we are referring to it as a transverse crack. So you'll see some distinctions, considerable distinctions between the amounts of transverse cracking that we note on different parts of the test section. I've kind of devised a slightly different survey form which goes for each station limit, station 0 to 1, 1 to 2, and so on, as opposed to just for the entire section. I probably will not attach that in the report, but I'll keep it for my own purposes later on as we get into analyzing the PASCO data. Video tour coming up on station 2, and you can see what I'm talking about in terms of getting into areas where the cracks have been spalled and so on. Right over there, we have full traffic control here, so I'm not going to get out in the wheel path and try to show it any closer, but you can see clearly how the cracks have spalled, and we have a crack width which gets up into the 1/2 inch up to 5/8 inch category over there. Those are what I'm referring to as moderate severity. We don't have any evidence of pumping taking place there. And then here's what I'm referring to as a transverse crack. This is off here in the, in an area that I'm referring to as alligator cracking in either wheel path. And this is something which goes across the lane outside the range of that. Continuing on. This is a very good illustration here of the need for having the PASCO unit get to a project before it gets overlaid, because it would be very difficult and confusing possibly excuse me, to categorize some of these cracks. The video record will help that I'm shooting now, but it won't take the place of the resolution that we should get from the PASCO. You can see what I'm referring to as block cracking patterns throughout here, where we've got a sequence of transverse cracks connecting longitudinal cracks in either wheel path. And then we move up and get out of that and into an area of more what I'm referring to as alligator cracking, where most of the cracks that are connected or